The story begins during the Second World War when the Soviet Union invades Poland. Janusz is falsely accused of crimes and pressured to sign a confession. Despite enduring severe torture, he refuses to sign. To break his resolve, the captors bring a woman forward and ask her about her relationship with Janusz. She claims to be his wife, and Janusz confirms this. However, under duress, the woman tearfully states that Janusz hates the Communist Party and spies against it abroad. As a result, Janusz is sentenced to 20 years in prison and sent to a remote Siberian jail. One day, Janusz observes an elderly prisoner named Mr. Smith dropping a piece of food. Another elderly prisoner tries to grab it, but Mr. Smith steps on the food and picks it up himself. Janusz, feeling pity for the weaker prisoner, offers his own food to him. He confronts Mr. Smith, saying the old man is weak and will die without food. Mr. Smith coldly replies that he too is old and will die if he doesn't eat. He advises Janusz to focus on his own survival if he wants to live. Later, Janusz meets another prisoner named Andrei, who reveals he was an actor sentenced to 10 years for playing the role of a rich man, which was seen as a crime. During their conversation, Janusz asks if anyone has ever escaped from the prison. Andrei responds that no one has ever succeeded, and attempting to escape would mean death. However, he shares a plan. They could cross the jungle, reach a lake to the south, and then cross the Mongolian border to freedom. The journey would be long and perilous, so Janusz begins saving food every day in preparation. The prisoners are often forced to perform grueling tasks such as cutting wood and breaking stones. One day, while returning from cutting wood, the prisoners are caught in a freezing windstorm. The officer orders them to stop, but the cold is so intense that several prisoners die within minutes. To survive, Mr. Smith heads toward the jungle, ignoring the officer's threats to shoot him. Realizing the danger of the cold, the officer allows the prisoners to follow Mr. Smith into the jungle to save themselves. The next day, some prisoners, including Janusz, are taken to a mine filled with toxic fumes. Janusz struggles to breathe and begins to hallucinate. In his vision, he sees a stone outside his house with a key beneath it, which he uses to unlock his door and enter. As he tries to escape the mine, an officer prepares to shoot him, but Mr. Smith pulls him back inside, saving his life. Janusz becomes terrified and tells Mr. Smith, "I have to get out of here. I know an actor who claims to know the way to escape." However, Mr. Smith warns him that the actor is lying. He explains that the actor has been in the prison for many years and only deceives new prisoners with false hopes of freedom to take their food. But Mr. Smith adds, "If you're serious about escaping, I'm ready to go with you." One day, a strong windstorm hits the area. Janusz tells the actor that this is the perfect time to escape, as the wind will erase their footprints. However, the actor insists they need more preparation and must gather more food before attempting to flee. Meanwhile, another prisoner, a Russian criminal, overhears their conversation. He approaches Janusz at night and says, "I want to escape with you. I have a knife that could help us on the way." The group begins gathering food and supplies. One night, they seize the opportunity and make a run for it. However, the prison officer spots them and gives chase. Due to the strong winds and darkness, the officer loses sight of them and sends dogs after them instead. The group continues running through the harsh winds, but after covering a long distance, they struggle to move forward. Janusz takes the knife from the Russian criminal and carves a wooden mask to protect his face from the cold, allowing him to press on. In total, 7 people escape from the prison: Janusz, the actor, Mr. Smith, the Russian criminal, an artist, and 2 others. Among them is a man who suffers from night blindness, though no one is aware of his condition. After walking all night, they stop to rest in the morning and take stock of their supplies. They have a knife, a small blade, and enough food to last a few weeks. Their plan is to head south, reach a lake, and then cross the Mongolian border to freedom. That night, they decide to camp in the jungle. Janusz suggests they light a fire to survive the cold. While gathering dry wood, the man with night blindness gets lost and doesn't return. The group searches for him, but fails to find him. The next morning, they discover his frozen body not far from their camp. They bury him and continue their journey. For weeks, they trek southward, but fail to reach the lake. Their food runs out, leaving them weak and starving. They take shelter in a cave, deciding to rest for a few days as they are too exhausted to continue. One night, the Russian criminal confronts Janusz, saying, "We're going to die of hunger one by one. We promised we'd reach the lake in a few weeks, but I think we're completely lost." Suddenly, Mr. Smith hears the sound of animals. He and the others investigate and find wolves that have hunted an animal. They scare the wolves away and devour the raw meat like animals. driven by their desperate hunger. The next day, Janusz decides to search for the lake alone. He tells the group, "If I don't return in 3 or 4 days, don't wait for me." He sets off on his own, facing numerous challenges along the way, including freezing winds and treacherous mountains. Despite his courage, Janusz grows weaker and weaker until he is on the verge of death. He begins hallucinating again, but somehow manages to return to the group. He tells them, "The lake is only 3 days away. We must reach it." As soon as he delivers this news, he collapses unconscious. The group builds a fire, feeds him, and lets him rest through the night. The next morning, after Janusz recovers, the group heads toward the lake. Finally, they reach it, feeling a sense of relief, because crossing the Mongolian border is now within reach. However, their destination is still far, so they continue moving forward. As they walk, Mr. Smith hears a scream and realizes someone is following them. They discover a girl who has been trailing them and wants to join their group. Mr. Smith warns Janusz that they have barely enough food for themselves and that the girl won't survive with them. Reluctantly, they leave her behind and continue their journey. After traveling for some time, they spot an animal stuck in the mud. They manage to catch it, and one of the group members remembers the girl they left behind. He feels guilty, thinking she is just like them, hungry and desperate. He goes back and brings her to their camp by nightfall. The girl's name is Irina, and she joins their group. That night, they eat well and sleep peacefully. The next morning, they wash their clothes, bathe, and shave their beards using a plate they have. They feel a rare sense of happiness, and the artist even sketches a picture of Irina. However, that night, Mr. Smith expresses his concerns to Janusz about Irina. He argues that taking her with them will increase their food consumption and slow them down. Despite this, Janusz, being kind-hearted, decides to let Irina stay with the group. The following morning, they resume their journey. Along the way, Irina tries to talk to Mr. Smith, but he remains cold toward her because she had initially lied to them about her situation. Eventually, Irina confesses the truth, and the group accepts her. To continue their journey, they must cross the lake. As they prepare to unload their belongings, Mr. Smith asks Irina if she knows how to swim. Irina admits she doesn't, but insists on staying with the group, as she wouldn't survive alone. Determined, she runs across the frozen lake and somehow manages to make it to the other side. Later, they come across a village, but decide to hide upon seeing the locals. The Russian criminal suggests they steal food from the village, but the others refuse. Ignoring their objections, he sneaks into the village and steals food without telling anyone. When he returns, Janusz scolds him, warning that if they are caught, they will be sent back to prison. After many days of walking, the group reaches the border between the Soviet Union and Mongolia. However, their companion, the Russian criminal, decides to stay behind. He tells Janusz, "This is my country, and I am free here. Even if I die, I will die in freedom, rather than living as someone's slave." With that, the Russian criminal parts ways, and the rest of the group continues toward the Mongolian border. Upon reaching the border, they feel a sense of accomplishment, but their joy is short-lived. They notice a picture of Stalin on the gate, realizing that the communists have also taken control of Mongolia. Disappointed but determined, they refuse to give up. They have already endured an arduous journey, surviving on wild animals, braving freezing winds, and climbing treacherous mountains. Now, they decide to head to India through China, as the British rule there offers safety. However, they are unaware that their future journey will be even more challenging. Their path is fraught with difficulties. No water, no food, and nothing but endless mountains, forests, scorching deserts, and blistering heat. They walk day and night for many days, but there is no sign of civilization. Hunger, thirst, and exhaustion take their toll. Their legs swell, and dehydration sets in. Despite the harsh conditions, they press on, driven by the faint hope of survival. At one point, Mr. Smith spots what appears to be a tree in the distance. He wants to investigate, but Janusz insists they continue walking south. This disagreement leads to a heated argument. Mr. Smith heads toward the tree, and the others follow, including Janusz, who has no choice but to join them as they are all desperate for water. When they reach the spot, they find a well. Overjoyed, they drink the water greedily, reviving themselves. After resting, they fill their containers with as much water as they can carry and continue their journey. Despite the temporary relief, their journey is far from over. If they stop now, they will grow weaker and may not survive the remaining distance. They press on, traveling for many more days until a massive sandstorm strikes. They barely escape its fury, but their water runs out, leaving them even weaker. Still, they support each other and keep moving forward. One day, Irina collapses unconscious. Her feet are swollen, and she is too weak to walk. When she regains consciousness, she forces herself to keep moving, determined not to slow the group down. However, the relentless desert proves too much for her. She collapses again, this time succumbing to her exhaustion and passing away. The group buries her in the desert and continues their journey, heartbroken but resolute. As they walk further, another companion collapses and dies from dehydration, further shattering their morale. Janusz and his friends trek through the high snowy mountains for many days. After a week, they finally reach India, where they are warmly welcomed. Their journey ends here, but not Janusz's personal quest. Poland is still under Soviet control, so Janusz continues to wander from one country to another for 50 years. When Poland finally gains its freedom in 1989, Janusz, now an old man, returns to his homeland. The movie concludes with a poignant scene that Janusz had repeatedly seen in his hallucinations. He finds a key under a stone outside his house, unlocks the door, and steps inside. There, he sees his wife waiting for him. They embrace and weep together, bringing the film to an emotional and heartfelt end.